1986?
I guess so.
AD? AD, right, yeah.
Terrible to be ABC.
Yeah, okay, so we're AD, and we're at Don and Helen Coyle's place down here next to the ever-flowing Smilkameen River. Boy, or Tulameen, this side. Yeah, Tulameen. And it's really flowing good. I'm John Sandness.
And I'm Helen Coyle.
And there's Helen Coyle.
I'm Helen Coyle.
Right. And John Sandness is interested in the history of this area, fascinated by the pioneers and people of this area. Helen doesn't qualify as a pioneer, but her father and her family certainly did. The early folks in here, they were Swedes. Yeah. Us Norwegians always say svensk. Svenski.
Well, there were lots of Swedes and Norwegians helped to settle this country, and lots of Norwegians at the mine up in Copper Mountain and in at Allenby. My mother and dad came to Princeton 1919, I think.
Right after the First World
War. Right after the First World War, and after the closure of Phoenix. Between the flu and the lowering of copper prices, Phoenix closed down, and a lot of the people came then to Princeton.
And Phoenix was Greenwood, right?
Phoenix and Greenwood, yeah.
They both.
No, Phoenix is on top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And Greenwood is.
Yeah, that's the town.
That's the. No, Phoenix was a town too.
It was?
Oh yes.
Like Copper Mountain?
Yes.
Same idea.
Bigger than Copper Mountain. Yes.
I've heard that there's still buildings up there.
One or two, but nothing very much. Dad had come over before Phoenix closed down because he was interested in getting back into farming. He loved the outdoors, and he loved cattle, and he loved animals, and he and Mr. Stenwald bought property along the Smilkameen River to
Is that still Stenwald's place down there?
Yeah.
The old Stenwald Park?
That's
so
right.
That would be about like
1919.
Yeah, starting from the new bridge here on the Carameus. That's maybe what, 4 or 5 miles down up the river, up the Smilkameen River on the south side of the river there. The Stenwald property. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, they bought that with the idea of starting a dairy farm.
Mm-hmm.
Dad had lots to do with cows, etc. Mr. Stenwald not so much, but the idea appealed to him too. Mm-hmm. And they bought the place. Then
Helen, the farm was purchased here.
Yeah.
And the idea was a dairy herd. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, they did have a dairy herd. I think 21, 22 cows. I'm not too sure on that number, but it was in that. And they supplied milk and butter to Princeton at Allenby. They didn't go to Copper Mountain because that was as much as they could handle. And
good. Okay. Right. Brought up here.
And brought up here.
No kidding.
That's right.
He saw the hand saw.
Yeah.
Hand sawed a house too. No chainsaws in those days.
No. And that house is still standing. We should go and get a picture of it because that's unusual.
Over by
Stenwalls. Yeah, Stenwalls. No, there's nobody living in there. No. And so that's where the
Jacobson's first.
That's where they first lived at that ranch. And then they, for cattle, they bought a herd from somebody who had the dairy farm at Phoenix.
And did they move those by freighter too?
No, they didn't move those by freighter. They went and got them. My mother's brother,
They drove it, an old cattle drive.
they drove.
I get the picture. They drove it.
They had a cattle drive
Yeah,
from Phoenix
yeah.
to here,
Yeah.
and the hoofs of the cows were getting very tender.
Yeah.
So Dad went to all the dumps he could find and found shoes. And
old packs and boots.
Yeah, and he made
Moccasins for them.
moccasins for all the
Yeah. How big was the herd? 30 or 40?
yeah, about 30 or 40. And
that's 4 times that.
Yeah.
My last count was there's 4 corners on a cow, right?
That's right. So they had those.
Yeah.
Now that's one of the rare things I can remember about the. Now I wonder if what I was thinking about was the second herd.
Yeah.
Maybe they called second herd something. Okay. Worked in Copper Mountain. Well, he came down with some of his friends, and we all took. Dad had phoned from someplace that he would, I guess Headley, that they would be at Williams Creek, 5 Mile Creek. So I can remember us all being down there to meet him, big picnic. And we had to wait a long time because they were way, way late.
They were straggling along.
Yeah, They were way, way late.
I was going to say maybe you ended up following along picking up the booties that the cows kicked off.
No. So then we went home, and then they finished their drive the next day, I guess.
Wow.
But that's how the cattle came. Well, then they had quite a lot. They did very well all the time.
They could sell the milk.
They could sell the milk and all the butter they could do. Dad delivered well, they had certain days, they had a routine, but worked out between them. Yeah. And there was milk in town and butter. Milk in town and in Allenby. They delivered up to Allenby.
What would a pound of butter? Any idea? You were 1.5 years old, so you were.
No, I wasn't clued up.
Yeah.
I haven't any idea.
I suppose they sold the milk by a bucket.
No, they had bottles.
They had bottles.
They had glass bottles. We have some of them down at the museum. But then after a while, like all partnerships, there was some disagreement about what. I haven't got any idea.
We won't go into that, okay?
Well, I haven't any idea. So then Dad left and Mr. Stenwald carried on. Kind of interesting to note that there were people in town here that were very poor. And my mother and Dad couldn't see them
not feeding the kids milk,
not feeding the kids milk or not giving them butter. And they said, well, you can pay it off when you can, when things get better and your kids grow up and they're working and can help you a little bit. Yeah. And some of those bills were 25 years being paid off. But
and they still paid them.
But they paid them off.
Oh, amazing, yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
That was nice.
I can remember one of them that paid off my mom. Well, she says, that's the end of it, Esther. Yes. And they both cried.
Yeah, they didn't want it. I bet they shared many a cup of tea and coffee
yes.
over those bills.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, they both cried. And Mom, she said, because she'd been so happy to be able to help her.
Yeah.
And never done her any harm.
Right, yeah.
And the other woman was so grateful.
Mm-hmm.
That was 25 years.
And it's so important for kids to have milk, too.
That's right.
So
That's
important.
Right. Yeah.
What is it we're supposed to have? The kids are supposed to have 4 glasses or something?
Yeah, we're supposed to drink a quart of milk a day.
Yeah. Even an adult?
Yes.
A quart?
Yeah.
Oh, gee. I don't
think three glasses is the very you're supposed to drink a day.
Right. It won't hurt us, I guess.
No. Otherwise.
Yeah. But boy, if you get that rich farm milk,
Yeah.
and drink 3. I'll bet there's 800 calories in a glass.
I'll bet there
With
is.
a half cream and half milk.
Yeah. Now where do I go?
Well, let's see. So the Stenholds and the Jacobsons were partners for about how many years, you suppose?
I haven't any idea.
But then, what did they call their dairy? What was the name of the dairy?
I think it was Stenwell's Dairy. I think so.
Dairy, yeah.
I think so. I don't know. When Dad and I wouldn't have a clue what they called it.
So did
probably Jacobson and Stenwell's. There's nothing.
So your dad was one of 9 kids, right?
That's right.
And he had other brothers and sisters that came to
Canada? He had one other brother that came to Canada, and that was his brother Arthur.
Uh-huh.
No, and then his brother Tura. His brother Arthur didn't stay very long. His brother Tura stayed with them out on the farm, worked part-time at Allenby, and he fell in love with my mother's sister. But my mother's sister didn't fall in love with him.
Oh, kind of sad, huh?
Yeah, kind of sad.
Yeah.
And then he went back to Sweden. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to come back out to this country, but his wife would have no part of it. Now, my dad's father was called John Jacob Svensson.
Svensson?
Svensson, yeah.
Svensson, yeah, okay.
And my dad's mother was called Betty Svensson Johansson before she married Dad's father. Wait a minute.
What part of Sweden did they grow up in? What part?
Dalsland.
Where's that?
Um,
You were there. I know this for a fact. You were there.
That's right. Okay, now they
Central? North?
Yeah. They owned a farm called Steenaby.
Now, Steenaby, Steen is a rock, right? Or stone?
John Jacob Svensson and Betty Svensson Johansson. They owned a beautiful, beautiful farm called Steenaby. And my dad always said it was the most beautiful place in Sweden. And when we went back to Sweden, I'll agree with him.
It was a beautiful place.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather signed a note for somebody at the bank, and this person didn't pay, so and it wasn't a great deal of money, at least it doesn't sound like it now to us, but it was, I think, $3,000 to $5,000 approximately in dollars. And that caused him to lose this farm, and there still was money to pay. So he immigrated to Iron Mountain, Michigan.
Oh yeah, I know that area.
Yeah, and
I know Iron Mountain. That's a ski area too.
Yeah, and he worked there till he had that note paid off. Well, this meant my dad and his brothers, and then they left that farm and they went back to where my grandfather had been born, which is a farm called Steensrud, and it's quite an area, and they have been there for umpteen generations. So, but my great grandfather was getting very old, so it meant my dad and his brothers did all the farm work at 10 and 11 and 12 years old.
Argamo.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's right, and
that's really young for backbreaking work, moving stone and haying by hand and putting up hay.
That's right.
I've seen it over there where in Norway, you know what they do? They hang the hay up to dry on the coast. I don't know they did that in the interior of Sweden.
Well, not now. I wouldn't know what they do now, and they do
Just
have.
like clothing. They'd
Yeah.
hang it up, and if it looked like it was going to rain, they'd take it down, put it in their. You know the rock pikas up in the mountain that do the same
Yeah.
thing? Yeah.
Well,
that was backbreaking work.
at that time, everything for that family had to come off that land, so that meant that that was sheep and all the rest of it. They had to look after that. Then my dad said when he was 5 years old, 5 or 6, when I got really enthused about weaving, he couldn't. And he couldn't. And I said, well, why, Dad? He says, Helen, when I was 5 and 6 years old, I'd have to get up, light the fireplace, so the girls could come down, it would be warm for them to weave, and then I'd have to sit with pitch knots and hold that up
For light.
For lights.
Those long winters.
That's right.
Dark, dark winters in Scandinavia.
Yeah. At 5 and 6 years old,
Yeah.
so he had no.
That's similar to the kid that grew up on the bellows of a blacksmith, you know?
Yeah.
He had to sit there and pump those bellows. And they asked him, you were around there, how come you don't know blacksmithing? He says, that's a farthest thing from my mind. I wouldn't be a blacksmith for all the tea.
Okay. So then, Grandpa came home, but he was worn out because he'd worked as much overtime as he could.
Over in Michigan.
In Michigan. Yeah. So Dad still had to keep on. Now, at that time, they were tithing.
Oh yeah, for the church.
Yeah.
10%.
And there was a widow lady with 3 children, and Dad used to go over and help them. You know, just
any chores or anything.
Yeah, anything he could do. Well, he tells about this time that he was over there, and along came the minister.
And away we go.
Okay, and the minister came, and she had nothing for tithing, so they took the cow she had to feed her.
That
children.
was a Lutheran church?
That was a Lutheran church. That's how rough they were with tithing in those days. And
they took the cow that the kids and everybody needed
right.
for food.
And this just floored my dad. Just floored that he had to live in a country where they would do that to him.
Well, that smacks of the old Catholic Church, too. Yeah. I thought the Lutherans broke away from that.
No, they tithed, too.
Oh.
And that really threw him. And at that time, it was they were having really rough times in Sweden to keep their families together because they were so poverty-stricken. And Sweden lost 9/10 of her young people. It was because it was at the time that the CPR was advertising.
Yeah. 9/10. That's almost like Ireland.
Yeah, they lost 9/10 of their population.
Mostly the men.
Mostly the men and some young girls too.
Yeah. And they came over. You know, in Minnesota, they came over and they were highly prized as cooks and housekeepers.
Yeah.
The rich people in Minnesota, actually they were railroad people too. They would hear about these Swedish girls and how well they could cook and everything, and they brought them over. And I knew one. My mother's best friend was Johnson, Catherine, and she was in such a situation where her mother had been one of those Swedish immigrant girls that worked for one of the rich families in town.
Well, so Dad wanted to go to Canada then, thinking that would ease the burden a little bit around, because this is why they all went. They knew there was no way their parents could keep them, and there was not any jobs for them in Sweden. So they came. He signed on with the CPR to come out to work on the prairies. Nobody ever told him it was there was no such thing as um, land of promise. It was lots of hard
Milk
work.
and honey.
Milk and honey.
Yeah.
So he worked for this farmer who he said was really good to him and paid him what he had contracted to pay him.
Yeah.
And but then finally in the fall, the farmer said, well, I can't pay you through the winter, and I have no money, and we haven't barely enough to keep ourselves. So I think you would be better to go and see if you could find a job. Well, the rest of the farmers were in the same situation.
So they weren't hiring.
They weren't hiring.
Yeah.
So my dad decided his dad had gone to Iron Mountain to find a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would go down to Iron Mountain to find a job. Well, at that time, they didn't need any cards or anything crossing the border.
Yeah.
So, and the amazing thing was, my dad was 5'6" at this time. And he went to Iron Mountain, and he stayed there for quite a few years.
What years would they be about?
I haven't any idea. That's what I was looking for now.
Oh, okay. Maybe in
you'll find
20s?
20s. No, because earlier, because they came here in 1919.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm way off.
So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
it would have been earlier than 1919.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And while he was there, he went from 5'6" to 6 feet. He was 22 years old.
And
grew.
At 22 years old?
At 22 years old.
He added 6 inches?
He added 6 inches.
Was it the food?
He didn't think it was the food. He thought maybe it had something to do with all the iron in the, he didn't really know.
Did anybody else in the family ever do that? Grow that late? Add 6 inches at 20?
No.
That's most unusual.
I know. It's really, really unusual.
Yeah. So he was a strapping man when he gained 20 or 30 pounds too.
Yes.
At least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And about 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when we were at Seattle, with that weaving thing, I met a woman from Iron Mountain, and she had she was out taking this course, also visiting somebody who had been in Iron Mountain years ago. So she had an old Scandinavian book with her on the lodges. So she brought it, and there I found my dad in one of the Scandinavian lodges. Well, she was always going to get that picture duplicated and sent to me, but I never did get it. But at any rate, there was.
It's interesting how things link up like that.
That's right. Yeah. Well, then he got talking to lots of people, and they were telling him about. It was pretty rough in the mining in those days. They were pretty rough, and he got talking to some
long hours.
Well, he got talking to some of the Swedish people, and they were all going out to Phoenix. Why they were going to Phoenix is kind of interesting. There were, back in Sweden, there was a certain amount of socialism going on, and people agitating about the conditions that they worked in. Now, these were well-educated people, and they were made persona non grata in Sweden. They wanted them out. And
they were causing trouble.
They were causing trouble.
Yeah.
And all these people had gone to Phoenix to work.
No kidding. Up and packed out of Sweden to Phoenix.
Up and packed out of...
How many?
Oh, I don't know.
Hundreds?
Well, no, I don't suppose so, but I mean, there's a...
The government said goodbye with our blessings in Sweden.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they all packed up and went to work out at Phoenix.
Yeah.
So all the Swedes figured this would be a hell of a good place to go.
Sure. Yeah.
And Phoenix was the only mining camp that had no strikes ever.
That,
Those people.
once they were free of their oppression over there.
Yeah, no, but you see what I'm trying to say is they knew, they went there and worked, and because they were diligent, etc., they worked their way up, and they got to be bosses.
Yeah.
And they treated their men with respect, and so did the company.
Yeah.
These bosses wouldn't let them treat them.
Yeah.
But it was the only mining camp in British Columbia that never had a strike.
That's an amazing record.
You
That's
bet your
one to be
life.
proud of too.
That's right.
When you consider all the personalities
Uh-huh.
among people and how hard it is to get any 100 people to agree on anything.
That's right.
So they must have really done their work well.
And so then Dad decided he would go there too. But he had, by this time, you had to have some immigration card. That you'd been to the States and you'd come from Canada. He had none.
Oh, yeah.
So how he got back into Canada, he buried himself in a carload of wheat.
Nobody tested the wheat
Nope.
with a pitchfork or anything either, huh? No, good.
So he got back to Canada and got out to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when he got here, he breathed a sigh of relief and coughed up a bunch of wheat germ too.
I guess so. Well, he wouldn't have had to be because Iron Mountain is, I think he said he went to Duluth, and it's not that far.
And you know where Duluth is?
Yeah.
That's where I grew up.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, it isn't that far from to
No,
the Canadian border.
That's why I know Iron Mountain. And Duluth was the railway head.
Yeah.
And once they got on that,
well,
was it a horse-drawn sleigh with?
No, a freight
train. Well, he probably hopped a freight in Duluth and
Yeah.
went up from there to Winnipeg.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
Because Winnipeg is the line that the early immigrants took when they came to the States. They went up to Winnipeg, and from there, that was the head of the rail there. They had until the line was built across. I don't remember.
I think my dad went on.
Never got that message across to me. When did they complete the Trans-Canada?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Anyway, so he smuggled himself back in. Thank goodness, or there wouldn't be any Jacobsons in Princeton. Right?
Yeah. and he then he went working for the mining company there. And
what did he do? Was he just a laborer? Did he have a skill?
No. He was a carpenter. He was always a carpenter.
So he was more or less a millwright or something like that.
Yeah, always doing something.
Yeah.
And figuring things out. He had a terrific brain. Yeah. He designed the flotation system up at Allenby.
He did. He was the engineer.
Well, he designed it. Yeah. The engineers had them stuck.
Yeah.
But he designed it, and it worked fine. Yeah. Never even got a raise in wages for it.
Yeah. No appreciation there.
No.
I guess there were a few strikes here.
Oh, I guess so. I don't remember that. I don't remember. So then, what can I tell you? 1917.
So he built a lot of houses around here too.
Well,
are we in one right now?
Oh, yeah. He built this house for my mother for her 25th wedding anniversary. Isn't that nice?
That's his anniversary gift.
Yeah.
I'll bet he spent a year on it too.
Oh, yeah. He and Eric did it, and they, everything the doors they made, the casings they made, everything.
Looking around, you can see the quality of the work too.
Yeah,
It's really nice.
That's right.
And it's kid-proof too. Look at plywood up the walls halfway. That keeps the kids from, when they roll around, going through the hardboard and stuff.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Yeah. How many houses did he build in town here? He must have built quite a few.
I don't know. I don't really know.
Yeah.
He built a few and helped people.
Are those cabinets his too?
What?
Those glass fronted hutches there? Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about the one in the dining room between the kitchen and the dining room there on the left wall there as you go through here.
There's also another one to match it that she used to have over there.
Yeah. So he didn't sit around very much.
Oh no, no. He loved living.
Yeah.
No,
He had a zest for it. Huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Zest for.
You showed me a photograph of him, and there was a definite sparkle there in that.
Oh, there was always a sparkle in that time.
Yeah.
He could take a ride from here to Headley.
Uh-huh.
And come back and find more interesting things to tell you about that ride than people had been around the world.
Yeah.
Really incredible.
Yeah. Observant man.
Yeah, very observant.
Curious mind.
Yeah.
Like us all think.
That's right.
Well, a 25th, most of them, what is it, a diamond ring, silver ring? It's the diamond for the 25th. But she got a house. I think I'd take the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a nice gift. They were living somewhere else then.
Yeah, we had another house over where the old people are, the Legion. Yeah.
No, the first house was over by the Silvercrest.
Yeah.
Silvercrest. Then you built a house near McKay's across the street here.
No. We lived in that house.
Lived in a house.
We rented that house.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And now, you asked me if we had where Dad got the wood, and I said I thought he got the lumber, the outside lumber from the Moose, but a lot of the other lumber he used to, like the inside. He would get half a freight car.
Yeah.
From Vancouver.
Yeah. Finished lumber.
Like he used poplar plywood in that house.
Yeah.
Because I asked him about that, because there's a different look in this plywood.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And he said that was poplar plywood that he'd used there, and he got it from, I don't know who in Vancouver, but he would get half of a freight car load, and somebody else would get another half of
Another
freight.
carpenter would get the other half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that brought their
price down.
Way down. Yeah. And it worked out.
You know, that's something I've been interested in, if I could digress a minute. We got all this poplar and quaking aspen and stuff around, cottonwood. That makes very good plywood, but we consider it a weed.
Yeah, I know.
And it's Smythe's out there, they cut down all those big trees around the resort, on the south end of the dry lake there. They should go for plywood. Beautiful.
Well, they use it. They use poplar for plywood in Sweden and a lot of the other countries.
Yeah.
And a lot of them like it because the odd one's got that blue running.
Oh yeah, that stain.
Yeah, that blue stain.
Yeah. Well, before we adjourn here today, I was thinking, you told me about the loft, living in the loft. I want you to be sure to get that. Remember, you kids lived in the loft of one house? What did you do up in the loft of that house?
Well, we slept there.
Yeah, but you also did some other things, didn't you? Played games?
No, that was on the bottom part.
Oh.
It had, that was nice too, because you didn't have to sweep the floor.
And you could leave your stuff laying around, huh?
Well, I don't know.
Well, that's a Scandinavian tradition, In the old days, they had the animals downstairs, and the people slept up, so they got the heat.
Well, I think that's just about as much as I can do today.
Yeah, I figured that's a good place to stop, where you're playing in the loft with your sisters and brothers there. Good. So we'll sign off today, and we'll carry on some other day. So this is December 4th. It's quite a little spell since we got together on this before. And we're over at Helen and Don Coyle's. And Helen said, I'm just going to go right over the top of this.
Oh, okay. I'm talking about the farm, the house that's on the farm, the Stenwalds farm. Wait.
Okay, we're going to put a little correction in here. This is September 27th, 87. And Helen's big brother Eric noted that when the Stenvolds built their home, the one that they transported from the Stenvolds and the Jacobsons built their home, the one they transported from Phoenix, it was cut into three pieces, loaded into boxcars on the railroad, and brought over here to Princeton. Then from the railroad tracks, it was carted by wagons, 7 or 8 miles perhaps, up to the present site where the farm is now, where Stenvolds are, right? And that must have been no small feat. And we were just laughing about it being the first modular home, where everything would be put together like that after being assembled somewhere else.
And put it together again and made a duplex out of it.
And they built a foundation under it too?
Yes, they built the
And
foundation.
then put it right, just
yes.
like modern day.
That's
They
right.
build these trailer houses. First they build the basement,
That's
then they
right.
put these double wides on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's what he did.
So he was using his head even then, huh?
That's
Yeah.
right. And
Now I'm going to check something.
just hold on for a while. I better gather myself.
Okay. But I can see that the guy was really, your dad was really using his head there, because to saw, I think, in two like that and carry it, well, how far is Greenwood? It must be
Well, and
80 miles.
No, it's not that far from Phoenix. 14 miles, but my God, this.
The hillside, the slope on that hill.
It's
Yeah.
just like that.
Gee, amazing.
That's right. Okay, he hasn't met my mother yet, huh?
Okay, we're going to slip a little correction in here. This is September 27th again, and we'd like to clarify how Helen and Eric and her other brothers and sisters got together here. That is, where did her mom and her dad, and when did her mom and dad meet? Okay. So, your mom came over in 1909, and she came here. I'm working on my memory now. She came here and worked with your uncle in the Phoenix mine?
My granduncle, really her uncle.
Yeah.
And he had the Grand Hotel in
Okay,
Phoenix.
okay. And she was one of those famous Swedish cooks. So she cooked in all kinds of chores around there, keeping the rooms and stuff like that. Whatever was needed for her granduncle. And then she moved to Vancouver for a while?
Yeah, she cooked with for mining engineers. And they were all over. They were in Vancouver and Yonks, 2 or 3 other small places. Then she came back in 1916. She went to Sweden, she and her sister. And they both got the black measles. And they were there for 2 years.
Recovering.
Recovering.
Now, what did black measles do?
Well,
you know, measles nowadays create a real problem for having children, or especially when you're carrying a child.
No, these black measles, they were black bumps all over her body,
Yeah.
and all her hair fell out, both her and her sister.
Oh boy. And of course, even in those days, people didn't want to walk around without hair, especially women. Did they wear wigs, or did they just wear hats?
No, well, they were that sick, and they were there for 2 years because of that illness. And then when they went to go back, okay, her sister went back first. Her sister Ida went back first.
Yeah. You mentioned Ida already. Yeah. Okay. Now, that isn't really important, Helen. This isn't really important. It's interesting that they had this. And it's great that they survived it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be visiting with you right now.
There's the interesting part about coming back.
Okay.
When Mom came back.
Yeah, okay.
And when she came back to keep herself busy during all this time, she had crocheted scads and scads and scads of crochet patterns.
with that little fine thread,
Yeah,
that
little
white
fine
thread, linen thread.
Well, not linen thread, but fine cotton.
Oh yeah.
So it would take as little thread as possible. And when she came to go through the customs in Montreal, they thought this was code, that Mom was a spy,
Yeah.
and they took all these patterns and they were to return them to her after the war, but that was the end of her patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you have loved to see those?
Well, would she have loved to have had them? Because there wasn't all that much money to buy books in those days either.
Yeah.
And the lady that came after her, she had a pillow she carried around all the time. And they split the pillow open and it was nothing but jewels. Mother said she'd never seen so many jewels in her whole life.
Well, of course they were in touch with the customs right there then, huh?
Well, the lady that came after her.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me of Norway. This woman, a Norwegian woman, was coming home abroad, and she had this satchel. It was kind of like an army duffel bag, all the stuff in it. And she dropped it on the cement floor in the customs deal, and it just reeked of whiskey. She was smuggling in some whiskey. Did they haul her out of that line in a hurry? And was she in trouble? Because they don't take lightly to that. Not Norwegians bringing whiskey because they tax it so heavily over there.
Oh, I know, that's terrible.
Okay, now your dad though. We got to get to your dad. Enough of my chit chat.
Well, he came to Phoenix
2 years
after
later.
1911.
You said.
Yeah, no, he was in Phoenix when Mom came back from Sweden.
Yeah.
And she and he were both very active in the Scandinavian Lodge in Phoenix. And
did they allow any Norwegians in that lodge?
Yeah, there were Scandinavians, Norwegians, and they used to have a huge picnic every year at Christina Lake, Scandinavian people. And one of the things that happened at this picnic was that they had a rudely put together replica of the Vasa, and they would take that out in the middle of the lake and burn.
That's when it tipped over in the Stockholm Harbor.
Yeah.
Harbor, I should say.
That's right.
Before it even went out to sea, right?
That's
that was
right.
the big battleship that rolled over.
Yeah, but anyhow, they used to burn it, and they had a very active Scandinavian lodge there, which they kept up here until about the 1929, 1930.
Even in Princeton?
Yeah, maybe even longer than that.
Yeah. Was that coordination with Amber and the ski hill and all that sort of stuff, the jumping?
No.
It was separate?
That was separate.
Yeah.
No, this was a Scandinavian lodge.
Wow.
But Dad built Dad and several of the others built the Scandinavian Lodge Hall. And but he masterminded it, I guess. But by that time they had left the farm.
And he first went to Manitoba. From Manitoba, he worked there for a year. He got fed well, and then they started to run out of money. The farmer sat down with him and said, Mr. Jacobson, I'm not going to be able to pay you next year. You're welcome to stay on if things get better, as I recall you said. If things get better, I'll pay you, but I can't guarantee you anything like that. And he heard about this work in Ironman, Michigan. Headed down there, worked there for a year, 2 years.
Oh, must have been 3 years.
Yeah. And then there was some trouble with, what was that?
No, he wanted to come back to Canada.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to come back to Canada, but he didn't. He wasn't able to come back to Canada
because
they
required a work visa or something.
Yeah, they required immigration papers or something.
So we ended up going to my old hometown there. That's natural because you see, Ironwood, Michigan is right on the South Shore.
Yeah.
And Duluth was a takeoff point for railroads
Yeah.
and even the Red River cars in the old days
Yeah.
to go up to Winnipeg. So
So he went from Duluth to back to the prairies and then back out to Phoenix, British Columbia, where there were quite a lot of his cronies, I think.
that's where he came up.
And that's where he met my mother.
Do you know anything about that meeting? Any unusual circumstances? Like, did they meet through that Scandinavian Society?
I imagine so. I
Yeah.
never did hear.
Yeah. Okay, that catches us up to there, I think, right?
Okay. There, and her brothers were working there. And another sister of hers, no, I'd forgotten about her. Ida was also there. So she had someplace
And somebody to talk to.
to talk to.
Yeah.
Well, then she worked for a long time for my uncle in his hotel. He had a hotel there. And in the kitchen cooking. And there were lots of mining people came there. And I don't remember what.
One of them was your dad.
No,
No, not yet.
no, not yet.
Oh, okay. He didn't come into the picture right there.
No.
But she was learning English all the time.
Oh, she was learning English,
Yeah.
but she went. One of the mining was superintendent of something or other, and he was in Vancouver, and he offered her a very good wage to come and cook for he and his wife and his family.
In Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she was in Vancouver many, many years. Well, not many years. But she and Aunt Minnie, she had also brought her sister out by this time, Aunt Minnie.
Yeah.
And she and Aunt Minnie went home to Sweden. The early part of 1914.
For a visit.
For a visit.
Yeah, okay.
And while they were there, they got the black measles, both of them. They lost all their hair.
Oh boy, for women that's tragic.
That's right, and their bodies were covered with black sores.
Oh boy.
And they were 6 and 8 months getting over them, and they had to be in quarantine.
Yeah, isolated. Yeah.
Isolated, and they're.
That doesn't help either when you're feeling down and out too.
That's right. That's right. And
oh.
They'd had a rough time there. Well, then they had booked passage back home, back to Canada, 1914, prior to the war breaking up.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
World
then the
War
war broke. Yeah.
The Great War.
Yeah. The war broke out, and they took 3 weeks going across the Atlantic Ocean. They went way up by Greenland and Iceland to keep out of the main traffic.
Yeah, there were battleships out there.
Battleships all over.
Those German battleships.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And then they landed in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother, to keep herself occupied, because she couldn't do anything much, she had crocheted every pattern she could run across. People would bring her patterns and copy, and she designed patterns and so forth to keep herself occupied.
Yeah.
And she had a box of these, a whole huge box.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came time to go through customs,
they looked at her luggage.
And they decided all these patterns were spy messages.
Spy. Right. It was coded in yarn.
Yeah,
thread.
Coded in spy. It was a spy message.
Yeah. And she couldn't speak. Could she speak English?
Oh, yes, she could speak
I'll
English.
bet she spoke her mind then. Huh?
Oh, yeah, but that didn't matter.
They didn't?
And they would return them to her after the war, but she never did see them.
Oh, no.
That's right.
That's tragic.
Oh, she was really. She still would cry about it when she would talk to me about it.
Oh, yeah. Gee.
Yeah, and
Spy messages.
yeah, but she said that part of that was because the woman ahead of her, they they'd taken a pillow apart that she carried with her.
Yeah.
And this pillow was all full of gems.
Oh, gee. Just her luck. So
Yeah.
then they were a little annoyed.
Yeah.
So then she comes along, innocent,
Oh, that's right.
and they nail her too.
That's right.
Oh, gee.
So then I think she was still in Vancouver at that time.
Yeah.
She was still in Vancouver.
Did she ever knit some of them again, or was she just so frustrated?
Oh,
about
she.
Yeah.
Oh, I imagine if she would anything
She
she,
could
saw,
remember.
she could.
Well, with
work
that photographic memory of hers too.
Yeah.
They probably reworked themselves in later years and other things she did.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I imagine
yeah,
her
yeah.
somewhere.
So they weren't completely gone.
No, but she was
Yeah.
really furious.
Yeah.
Because during the war, you see, at that time it was hard to get thread in Sweden before the war. Well, then she was in Vancouver
Mm-hmm.
for quite a while. She bought property.
She did.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't that unusual?
Yes.
Very unusual for a woman to become an entrepreneur like that, isn't it?
She bought property.
Yeah.
And
Whereabouts? Down in the good places? Valuable places?
yeah.
Where? Right up in North Van?
Yeah, North Van.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, where British properties are now.
No kidding. Yeah.
That's right. And but during the Depression, she had to let them go.
Mm.
She had some there, some around Capilano Creek. She had one up there, and quite valuable now.
Mm-hmm.
And British properties, I think she had 2 of them there.
Do you know where they are? Have you ever gone back? You don't know.
No, she showed them to me.
Yeah.
One time when we were in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And the 2 on the British properties she'd had to let go shortly after they were married. But the other one she kept on to that for years and years.
Yeah. Was it just vacant, or did they put something on it?
No.
Just vacant.
No, because that's where she was going to live.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But then
somebody else came into the picture.
That's right. Then I don't know if she went back up to. I don't know why she left O.B. Smith's and went back to
Greenwood?
Phoenix. No, I really don't.
Yeah.
But at any rate, she was working again for my uncle, maybe better wages. That might be the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then she met my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and they were married in Spokane.
They went all the way down to Spokane.
Yeah.
How come? Weren't there any
December
preachers?
the 17th, 1917.
Huh.
December
17th, 1917. Yeah.
Yeah. How I know it's December the 17th. We were in North Bay. My mom and dad were given the clock for a wedding present.
Uh-huh.
And Mom had given me the clock.
Uh-huh.
And it was in our basement at North Bay. And that morning, Dad had died in January the year before. And the clock wouldn't stop striking. It wouldn't stop striking.
It went nuts.
All day long.
It went nuts.
Yeah.
And everybody else in the house, too, huh?
Well, I was the only one home.
Oh.
The kids were at school and Dawn was away somewhere.
Yeah.
And Mom was in Yakima with Helen at the time. And I phoned her up and I says, "Is today your 50th wedding anniversary?" And she says, "Yes."
No kidding.
It's true.
Isn't that unreal? That's almost mystical, huh? It's almost mystical that it should happen like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they were.
Yeah.
And then they came back and lived in Phoenix, and Dad built a house up there.
The one he later moved.
No. When we were about 5 or 6, we were up to see the house.
Yeah.
It still stood then. It was one of the few buildings Dad had. But it's gone since after they flattened everything out.
Mm.
And then the mine shut down in 1918 and we moved here. Meanwhile, they had the flu epidemic in
17.
17 or
Yeah,
18.
yeah, that
Field.
big one.
Yeah.
That big one worldwide, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the
And they
bad.
lost lots of them. Mom lost her sister and her brother.
Oh,
Were buried the same day.
mm.
My dad had it terribly, and my
He
mother was
survived it?
my mother was getting it, and I was not very old. This was November, and
Yeah,
I was September,
yeah.
and she was going to leave me in the house, and somebody was going to come and pick me up.
So she wouldn't spread it to you.
So she wouldn't spread it to me, and then
Yeah.
the other woman wouldn't get it that way.
I see, yeah. Uh-huh.
And
We're cover up a little bit here, Helen's discussion here, because we figure it's not right. And being a curator of the museum, Helen was going to get this right. But let me see here. Did you know about Ironwood, Michigan? Can I tell you something about where your grandfather was?
no,
That was a famous skiing area,
was it?
and that's where all the U.S. Olympic skiers came out of. That and Duluth, and they competed with the guys from Thunder Bay. And so that was that's where all the ski jumping started, really. And so the Scandinavians from Ironwood would come up to Thunder Bay and Duluth, and they'd rotate around. Happen to know that because my grandmother lived right next to the main skiing area in Duluth where they practiced jumping. And they mine copper there.
Yeah, that's where my dad.
Yeah, why they call it ironwood? You know, it's an irony, to use a pun. It's an irony because they call it ironwood and they mine copper. But it's a beautiful area. It's native copper, pure copper. The Indians could pick it up and pound it into shapes.
My dad said when they got it down the mine, they could just pick the copper.
Yeah, it was pure and it was big chunks. So that was pretty good. Oh, Frank Antony's got a beautiful iron kettle too. He's got one that should be, if we ever have a display of metal, it'd be interesting to get old metal things for the museum and put in it like copper things and iron things and hand forged things, homemade knives and fish spears. All that stuff men are interested in, you know, traps, anvils, stuff like that. There were more anvils, for example, made out of railroad rails, and the railroad companies would care to know about. Yeah. Plus the main beams running under buildings. Uh-huh.
And they said, yes, that's right.
Hmm.
And then I asked Mom, and I said, why didn't you ever tell me that, Mom? Oh, she said, I couldn't even talk to you about that. That was just too hard.
Yeah, I guess. She probably thought you were dead when she heard that.
That's right.
See, there was no hope that you'd be alive after 2 days in November, cold like that, in the mountains.
No, well, I don't know how it happened, but that's how it happened.
I suppose the house stayed warm for part of a day. You know, the fire probably stayed on for part of a day.
Nice
And
warm.
maybe you had a nice warm blanket or something and crawled under.
That's right. That must have been what it was.
Yeah. But even little kids have survival instincts.
That's
I
right.
remember how Carl, if he was cold, boy, you'd find him looked like a little cocoon. You couldn't, you know, he'd be all wrapped up.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah.
But there were lots of old Phoenix people in Princeton.
They still called you the miracle baby?
No, they didn't call me the miracle baby, but I sure got special treatment from them. All the time I was young, and I never could understand
why. Yeah, yeah.
No, okay.
They'd always have a cookie for you, huh?
Oh, cookies or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Stop and talk to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, so quite a few of the Phoenix people moved here then, huh?
Yeah, that's quite a lot. Now we better stop.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm going to cry a bit here.
Mm. No, we're on the air.
Okay. I was born.
You were born in September, you told me.
September 1918.
Mm-hmm. And then you had the near squeak in November.
And then November was the flu.
Yeah.
And we came here in 1919. Now, whether how we came to be here. My uncle, who had the hotel in Phoenix, came and with that's A.O. Johnson, with Charlie Eckhoff, and they bought the Tulameen Hotel. And then they came back to Phoenix, and they told Dad that they thought there would be place for a dairy here, but there was no dairy. And my dad really liked the outdoor life, and he liked the farm life. So he and Mr. Stenwald agreed to buy the cows in Phoenix.
And they had the big trail drive.
And they came and they settled up there. Now, where are you going to say that where the Stenwald farm is now?
Well, I would say it's south, almost south of where we're sitting right now.
Yeah.
It's on the Smilkameen River, on the south side of the Smilkameen River. And who's living there now? Stenwalds? No.
No, there's nobody living there now.
Nobody?
No.
Well, what's his Ken?
Yeah,
Mansfield.
He's got a place close to it.
Mansfield, right close to Mansfield's, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, then Mom and Dad worked.
Well, you didn't tell me about how they got that farm. How did they happen to get that farm?
Oh, Dad had saved money.
Oh, how much would it cost in those days?
I haven't a clue. I never did ask him that. Yeah. And I don't know how much money.
Running through your stories, though, I think those Swedes were fairly frugal. They were careful after those events, and I'll bet they didn't go in debt very often either after their experiences with those banks over in Sweden, huh?
No.
Yeah.
They were very frugal and very careful with their money. Yeah. And Dad had saved some, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I don't know anything about the financial arrangements on that farm. Not a thing.